The fluorescent lights of the community center cast harsh shadows across Marcus Webb's face as he stood backstage, his heart hammering against his ribs. He could hear the auctioneer's voice rising and falling like waves, punctuated by bursts of laughter and applause. In his pocket, his phone buzzed again. Another notification from the bank about his overdue mortgage payment. His mother's medical bills sat in a folder in his car, each one a reminder that he was drowning, that no matter how hard he worked at the construction site during the day and drove for rideshare at night, it would never be enough. And now, here he was, about to be auctioned off like a prize cow at a county fair, all because his best friend convinced him it would be fun. And for charity. Marcus closed his eyes and whispered, a prayer he wasn't sure anyone was listening to anymore. 3 weeks earlier, Marcus had laughed so hard he'd nearly spit out his coffee when Danny pitched the idea. They were sitting in their usual booth at Mel's Diner, the place where they'd been meeting every Tuesday morning for the past 15 years, ever since high school. A bachelor auction? Marcus shook his head, grinning. Man, you've lost your mind. Come on, Danny urged, leaning forward with that infectious enthusiasm that had gotten them both into trouble more times than Marcus could count. It's for the children's hospital. They're trying to raise money for a new pediatric wing. All you gotta do is dress up nice. Stand on stage for 5 minutes and let some nice lady buy a dinner date with you. It's harmless. It's humiliating, Marcus countered. But his smile faded as he thought about the children's hospital. His younger sister had spent 3 months there when she was 8, battling leukemia. The nurses had been angels. The doctors had saved her life. And the whole experience had left an indelible mark on their family. Please, Marcus, Danny said, his tone shifting to something more serious. You know what that place means to this community. And honestly, everyone who knows you knows you're one of the good ones. You volunteer at the soup kitchen. You helped rebuild Mrs. Patterson's fence after the storm. You're always the first one to help and the last one to ask for anything. Let people celebrate that. Let them bid on dinner with a genuinely decent human being. Marcus had finally agreed, though he'd insisted it was a joke, that nobody would actually bid on him. He was just a regular guy, 32 years old, weathered hands from construction work, a face that had seen too much stress for someone his age. He wasn't a doctor or a lawyer or a tech entrepreneur. He was barely keeping his head above water. The night of the auction arrived with all the fanfare of a small town, event that had somehow captured the community's imagination. The local newspaper had done a feature. The radio station had been promoting it for weeks. Marcus stood in the wings wearing a suit he'd borrowed from Danny, watching as bachelor after bachelor was paraded across the stage to enthusiastic bidding. And next up, the auctioneer's voice boomed, we have Marcus Webb. This gentleman works construction by day, but spends his evenings volunteering at our local soup kitchen. He's been known to shovel driveways for elderly neighbors in winter and has single-handedly organized 3 neighborhood cleanup days this year alone. Who'll start the bidding at $50? Marcus walked onto the stage, blinded by spotlights, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. He could hear murmurs from the crowd, see the sea of faces staring up at him. $50? Someone called out. 75! Another voice chimed in. The bidding climbed slowly. 100, 150, 200. Marcus tried to smile, tried to look grateful, but all he could think about was how surreal this all felt. How strange it was to stand here being evaluated like merchandise while his entire life was falling apart. Behind the scenes. Then, just as the auctioneer was about to bring down his gavel at $350, a clear voice rang out from the back of the room. $1. The entire auditorium fell silent. Marcus squinted against the lights, trying to see who had spoken. The auctioneer looked confused. I'm sorry, miss, but the current bid is $350. Did you mean? I know what the current bid is, the woman's voice replied, calm and steady. I'm offering $1, and I'd like to invoke the charity clause. Marcus had no idea what that meant, but the auctioneer's face had gone pale. Someone rushed over to whisper in his ear, and after a moment of animated discussion, the auctioneer returned to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Harrison has invoked the charity clause, which states that any bidder can offer $1 if they simultaneously make a direct donation to the hospital equal to or exceeding 10 times the current highest bid. Ms. Harrison has just transferred $3,500 to the Children's Hospital. Mr. Webb, it appears you have a date. The crowd erupted in applause and confused chatter. Marcus stood frozen on stage, his mind reeling. Who would do something like that, and why? He found out 2 days later when he arrived, at the address he'd been given for their dinner date. He'd expected a restaurant, but instead found himself standing in front of a modest coffee shop in a quiet neighborhood. Inside, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee already waiting, was a woman who looked to be in her early 40s. She had kind eyes and an easy smile, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater. "Marcus Webb?" she asked, standing to shake his hand. "I'm Elena Harrison. Please sit down. I hope you don't mind coffee instead of dinner. I thought we could talk first." Marcus sat, completely bewildered. "I have to ask, why did you do that? The $1 thing?" Elena's smile widened. "Because I wanted to make a point, and I wanted to talk to you specifically. Do you know why you were the only bachelor I bid on all evening?" Marcus shook his head. "I've been watching you, Marcus," she said. And before he could look alarmed, she laughed and continued. "Not in a creepy way, I promise. I'm from this town originally. I moved away 30 years ago, built a life elsewhere, made some money. A lot of money, actually. And for the past 6 months, I've been coming back here quietly, trying to understand what this place needs. Do you know what I kept seeing?" "What?" "You," Elena said simply. "I saw you serving meals at the soup kitchen. I saw you helping that elderly woman carry her groceries. I watched you play basketball with kids at the park, spending your lunch break making sure they had someone to look up to. I saw you, Marcus, and I saw someone who gives everything despite having very little." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "How did you—" "I also saw the foreclosure notice on your front door last week," Elena said gently. "I saw you sitting in your car outside the hospital, holding what I assume were your mother's medical bills, looking like the weight of the world was crushing you." Tears pricked at Marcus's eyes. He looked away, embarrassed. "I didn't come here to embarrass you," Elena said quickly. "I came to tell you that people like you, people who give without expectation, who serve without recognition, who hold communities together with simple acts of kindness, those people should never have to suffer in silence. I made my fortune in tech, Marcus. I sold my company 2 years ago for more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And I've been searching for what to do with it, how to make it matter." She slid an envelope across the table. Marcus stared at it but didn't pick it up. "Inside is a check," Elena explained. "It covers your mortgage in full, your mother's medical bills, and enough to give you breathing room for the next year. But more than that, inside is also a proposal. I'm establishing a foundation here in our hometown. It's going to provide support for people like you, people who serve their communities but fall through the cracks of our social safety net. I want you to help me run it. I want your eye for seeing where help is needed, your heart for understanding what people are really going through." Marcus finally picked up the envelope with shaking hands, but he didn't open it. He looked at Elena with tears streaming down his face. "Why me?" "Because kindness recognizes kindness," Elena said softly. "Because I was once a little girl in that children's hospital, scared and alone, and a nurse stayed with me all night holding my hand, even though her shift had ended hours before. Because someone showed me that compassion matters more than any balance sheet. You remind me that the best investment we can make is in human dignity, in lifting each other up." That night, Marcus drove to his mother's house and told her everything. They cried together, laughed together, and for the first time in years, Marcus felt like he could breathe. The weight hadn't disappeared. Life would always have its challenges, but he was no longer carrying it alone. 6 months later, the Harrison Community Foundation officially opened its doors in a renovated building downtown. Marcus stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, watching Elena address the crowd about their mission to support community heroes, the volunteers, the helpers, the quiet servants who held society together. Applications had already started pouring in from people, nominated by their neighbors, people who gave everything and asked for nothing. That evening, as Marcus locked up the foundation office, he thought back to that moment on stage, standing under harsh lights feeling like a joke. He thought about how close he'd been to giving up, how the weight of his struggles had nearly broken him, and he thought about a woman who'd paid $1 to change his life. not because she wanted recognition, but because she understood that sometimes the most valuable things in life, kindness, dignity, hope, can't be measured in dollars at all. His phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Told you it would be fun." Marcus laughed, shook his head, and texted back, "You had no idea." As he walked to his car under a sky full of stars, Marcus Webb understood something he'd forgotten in the darkness of his struggles. That goodness begets goodness. That kindness creates ripples we can't always see. And that sometimes the universe conspires to remind us that we're never as alone as we think we are. All it takes is one person willing to see us, really see us, and decide that our dignity is worth fighting for. The auction had been no joke after all. It had been the beginning of something beautiful, a reminder that in a world often focused on taking, the greatest power lies in giving, and the truest wealth is measured not in what we accumulate, but in what we offer freely to others.